Hey folks, this is Mike Tholfsen from the Microsoft Education team, and we're here for the latest webinar on remote learning with Microsoft EDU. We are almost up to show number 40. Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we've had a lot of topics, and what's going to be interesting today is that we're bringing back Jonathan Briggs and a few of his friends from Eastside Preparatory School. And those of you that might remember, Jonathan was on one of the very first shows we did when this was all brand new. We barely knew what we were doing. And Eastside Prep was one of the very first schools in the nation that moved full-scale online learning. And at the time, it was a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks. And so we thought it would be great now that the school year, at least in the Western world, is wrapping up. We wanted to have Jonathan, and we also have Matt Delaney and Cheryl Miller that we'll introduce in a second, all from Eastside Prep, to really talk about what's happened during the school year and what they're thinking about for next year. But before we do, we'll just do a couple of quick updates like we always do. We have the Microsoft Education Remote Learning site, which is our main site with all of the latest updates and everything happening. We have the Teams for Education Quick Start Guide, which is the really easy way to get up and running with Teams for Education. It's a nice PDF format. It's in many languages for everyone around the world to try out. And then also there's the remote learning community, and that is over 6,000 educators strong now. People from all over the world have joined in this community, educators, school leaders, IT admins, and we have Microsoft product team members in that community, and we're working with schools, helping, learning from each other. And if you have not yet joined, it's a great place to learn a lot about what's happening in the world of remote learning. And also for today's updates, so with the theme with graduation coming up, there is an online graduation site that we've set up from the Microsoft Education perspective. You can learn about different tools and processes and how we can help you if you're trying to figure out the world of online graduations. It's a bunch of stuff there. We also have one of my very favorite sites. It's not new, but it's really important, the accessibility resources for remote learning. So we've put together all sorts of packaging up of all the great things we have for special education, accessibility, and inclusion resources in a really easy to consume site. One of the top topics for remote learning is students with accessibility needs, and how do we keep making sure that we include all students. So that is available. And then lastly, and I hope Eastside Prep is using this because they do use a lot of OneNote, the Save a Copy of Your Class Notebook. At the end of the year, if you want to take your class notebook with you as a student, we do have the ability to do that, and not everyone knows that, so be sure to check that out. And so without further ado, we're going to introduce our guests today. We've got Jonathan Briggs, we have Cheryl Miller, and Matt Delaney. And actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unshare my screen, and we're just going to meet them face to face.
Here we are.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
I'm Jonathan Briggs. I'm the Director of Strategy, Tech, and Innovation at Eastside Preparatory School. I've been there 15 years. The school is 17 years old, and we have been running school remotely since March 2nd.
And my name is Cheryl Miller. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management at Eastside Prep. It's my second year at the school, my 15th year overall in admission in a combination of higher ed and independent school admission. So really happy to be here, Mike.
Hey folks, my name is Matt Delaney. I've been at Eastside Prep for 13 years. I'm the Director of Academic Design and Integration. You can see behind me a little bit of our curriculum map, which is about our program, which is certainly important at this time. But what we're really finding, and we all know already, is that what's most important is people, our faculty, our staff, our students.
That's great, right? So one thing, this is just a story I'll share briefly, because when Jonathan said we've been doing this since March 2nd, I remember, Jonathan, I think it was like February 23rd or 4th. I think it was the Friday before the very first cases in Washington State came to light. And you'd reached out and you said, hey, we're just kind of, kicking around some ideas just in case. And we were going to have, you and I were going to have a meeting on, I think, Monday or Tuesday. Yep. And I remember going home like, oh, that's good. They're being very proactive. But, at the time, I didn't know it was coming. And then over the weekend, all of a sudden, all these cases sprung up. And I think the world changed, at least in Washington State that weekend. And then by the time we had our call, it was a that call was the real deal all of a sudden.
Yep,
versus
it was on Teams.
Really prepared.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting how quickly things moved that weekend. So that was a good reminder. So Jonathan, I'm going to pop up a slide that you put together, and I think just at a high level, having you walk through what Eastside Prep has gone through in the last few months, teaching, learning, the school systems, everything involved. I mean, not everything, but just giving a high level summary and helping people understand what your school's been working on.
Sure, happy to do so. I'm going to wait just a sec for this slide to come up for me. So yeah, I think obviously when you're trying to solve problems for your school community, the devil's in the details, and the nature of this type of communication is that we're going to be sort of abstract and general. I think the most important things that Eastside Prep has done in response to remote school is to really remember that school is about more than just class time. We've been doing all sorts of interesting things to serve the community of both faculty and students and even parents. Cheryl is, maybe she'll talk about later, she's put together a bunch of virtual block parties. Down in the bottom right, we've got a recreate a masterpiece photo contest we did with students. A little bit above that, we did a Bob Ross painting, community painting thing with our faculty. And then in some of the other photos there are what we're going to do with our 8th grade continuation and high school graduation, which I'll talk about in a second. I think the most important thing that we keep coming back to when we redesign a new event is one that we have tons of efficiencies built in over the years where graduation is just like last year, except we're going to solve 1 or 2 problems. And this year we have to rebuild graduation from scratch because it's an entirely new set of constraints and new ways of doing things. And that has been true for every class, every lab, every event. And so just willing yourself to get through the next one and figure out, we got to rebuild this all over again. Takes a little bit of grit, to say the least. It sort of feels a lot like it did 15 years ago when we had our first graduating class and we had to invent all these things. But I would say that it's easy to look and see all the new constraints that you have because being remote is different from being in person. But it also has new opportunities. As a quick example, the ability to bring in a guest lecturer into your class is super simple right now. It's actually no different than showing up to class yourself. And so we've had teachers bringing in guest lecturers who also are sitting at home, not doing a ton at the moment, to talk to our students, which has been a great add. I think we'll save a little bit of the solving for fall till later in our conversation, but we are actively trying to figure out what the world's likely to look like in September. What are families comfortable doing, and how can we support that with sort of pragmatic tech purchases now? One of the nice things that we have seen over the last 3 months is that we have enough different tools in Office 365 that we essentially can cobble together a solution to almost anything. It's not always the most streamlined or the most elegant, but it's a lot more pleasant than having to go figure out POs and talk to salespeople and do demos of products. We can just download, try, and say, I wonder if we could pull it off this way. So that's been a huge assist in us reimagining what will graduation look like, or how do we make new families feel welcome at our school. And one of the things that we're really looking forward to, and we've been asking our teachers to do, is to both record and any observations that you have about what it's like to teach remote in case there's a resurgence in the fall where we have to go remote again. And what are the new things that you have learned about the way that you can teach using all these tools that are going to enhance your in-person classrooms in the fall? So I think with that, I think we'll bring back the 4 of us, and I can answer any further questions anyone might have about those topics.
Jonathan, I wanted to just come back to something that you mentioned early in your intro here. You mentioned the word grit. And I think when anyone's in a situation like this, it takes a little time to get your bearings, to get your footing and figure out what it is. And then it's incumbent upon us and anyone in education to figure out what kind of mindset we want to enter the rest of this with. I was doing a call with a colleague the other night, one of the best educators I know. Like you walk into a classroom like this is a conductor. And he said to me, I just don't think seminar is going to work in this setting. And because we've been doing this a little bit longer, I kind of jumped in the conversation and I said, seminar will work, right? We just have to get to the finish line right now. And now we're going to have the summertime to really think about how we want to do it better. We're all already better educators and better teachers from the time we've spent in this. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that grit piece, and having a growth mindset walking into this is huge.
I also think it's important to have a sense of community within our leadership team that helps us to navigate and inspire the faculty and staff of the school, as well as the students and families, to do everything from the heavy lifting of redesign to just showing up on a daily basis. Sometimes with all the circumstances we have right now, that in and of itself just feels tough to get up and sign on. And so I think that we actually have daily briefings as a senior leadership team, and that as much as it can feel like Groundhog Day, some days it really does feel like we have each other, we have each other's backs, and we're also staying really connected and fully informed about what each person is doing in the life of the school. So as we engage a lot of our grit and a lot of new thinking to get through this, I think having one another as a support network in that process has been really, really powerful.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. I've talked to other schools that have talked about that, what you said, Cheryl, where just the educator, staff, and leadership team staying grounded and connected during these times has been really almost as important as with the students, because all of these, a lot of people that never planned for this way of doing their job. And so, the growth mindset, the grit, and just, oh my gosh, how am I going to do what I never thought I'd have to do? That's something that's hard to do alone. So it's good to have a community. That's good.
Yeah, one of the tough things on that point is the number. If you think about just in your normal work life, how many things you go, oh, next time I see so-and-so, I'm going to mention this. But it's not really worth an email, or it's not really worth setting up a meeting. I mean, that's way too formal. I just had an observation. And now we have to set up meetings for all these things. Mm-hmm. And it's just like a little bit of a barrier to entry that you just have to wrap your mind around, that it's okay to just set a meeting for 10 minutes so you can mm-hmm. have a discussion that doesn't necessarily have action items or anything associated with it. And that it not only is it okay, it's important that we keep doing those types of things to stay connected.
Yeah, I have a lot of enthusiasm for Teams chat for that reason. I think Teams chat is the virtual equivalent of bumping into someone in the hallway. And it really functions in a way so as to both for our adult members of the community, but also I have students that will Teams chat me and know that that's a great way to be able to get some direct feedback on something that they want in that moment or pretty close to that moment, as is reasonable. And I think that has been a really nice part of being in the Teams ecosystem, is having more of that on-demand conversation that happens through chat.
Yeah. So Matt, we're going to now talk a little bit more on sort of the educator side and curriculum side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a slide. I'm going to share back now the PowerPoint and have you talk a little bit about the education and curriculum side. So give me just a second. Okay, let me know when that comes through.
That's perfect. I can see it right there. I want to connect again to something Jonathan opened up with, and that's the idea of being able to use the Office 365 ecosystem. We talk a lot about transaction cost at our school, right? What does it take? What is the cognitive load of moving from application to application, ecosystem to ecosystem? And what I've so appreciated since we've started teaching with Teams and all the other applications available is that for me as an educator, as a teacher, and for my students, there's just so much less gear shifting in terms of how to get to other applications. So I've really appreciated that. I've got four things I want to talk about before I jump into them. The first thing I would say is this: I've had to adjust a little bit as we move from face to face, which I guess we technically still are, but we're now screen to screen. As a teacher, live, I am, and in front of people, I'm able to take a lot for granted. I can design my class experience to 80% perhaps, and then walk into the classroom, and then the kids are going to work with me. They're going to be patient with me. I'm going to be patient with them. I found that since we've entered this screen to screen phase, I have been much more focused on making sure that I am explicit and overt with my visuals, with what I'm sharing for students. It's almost like my delivery was primary when we were face to face, and now the content up on the screen is primary, and I'm supplementing that. So if you take a look up on my slide here, it's just a picture of my OneNote for my economics of development class this spring. I worked over the course of the last number of weeks to really refine what that agenda looked like, to make sure my students knew what was coming, right? To make sure that I didn't have to over-explain. And so you'll see it there, anything from here's what the next activity is to here's what we're looking at going forward. And so that's been really important for me to be, as I say here, visually overt and explicit with my students. Huge in remote learning. The other piece is being a visual storyteller, right? So I've included a picture up there. I have to take a couple of extra moments before I come into a team session to get my energy up for my students. So not only am I telling a story with the resources I have up on the screen, but they're seeing a little bit more emoting from me, because you can really be kind of sitting back as a student in this space. The other thing that I've been working to emphasize with my students is connection. Connection between me and each one of them. Connection between each of the students, right? So that can mean that I've got a goal of 100% participation and connection for every class period. That means I need to say every student's name. It means I've got to give them all opportunities to participate. And it also gives, in pursuing that goal, I'm primarily using channels within Microsoft Teams. That's so much of where my students are going to do their breakout work. So I can put them in any group configuration, and then I have the ability to pop in and out of different channels to see how things are going. And then the final thing I would say I've been thinking about is being the conductor. In this space, it is, you do sit back. You are hesitant to engage in a conversation. And so myself, our other faculty members have been working to think deeply about how do we pull students into the conversation. And one of the most simple things we have to do is say, we're going to call on you during class. We're going to cold call you, right? But you're prepared to do it, right? And so over time, I've worked with my students to help them have a muscle memory, to be able to be ready to answer a question at any time. So emphasizing these four different things has helped me stay in the space we were talking about before, in terms of how am I leaning into this? What is my mindset? How am I getting better at this? And also, how am I continually extending an invitation to my students to say we're all going to get better at this together? We're working right now just to get our faculty and students to the finish line of the academic year. And then back to Jonathan's earlier point, before we close it down, before we go to take that big breath, that big deep breath, we're thinking about, okay, what is it we've done well this spring? What do we want to continue to do when we come back next fall? And so that's the moment in time we're in right now.
That's great. Thanks for covering that. I think here's a question for you. I'm kind of curious, and you were talking about some of the educators and reflections, and I'm sure there's a bunch, but in particular, I'm wondering, for any of you, can you talk about maybe an educator that on March 2nd was the, say, least likely to be liking distance learning, and maybe where some of those people are at now? Like, has it changed? Have they adapted, or is it, I'm curious if there's any interesting arcs of sort of least likely to, hey, this is okay, or maybe it's still hard. I don't know. Depends.
Hey, Jonathan, can you speak to, if you remember on a recent professional development day, Jonathan asked every faculty member to participate in a flip grid so that they could record some of what that arc was. Jonathan, can you speak to any of the stories on the flip grid?
I did. Let me think. There's a lot has happened in that last month.
Yeah.
I think what was most apparent about those flip grid stories was the degree to which every day our teachers were going back and rethinking about how class could go the next day. There was a lot of, most of the coaching that so we asked them, how would you coach yourself? It's October, there's a resurgence in COVID, or there's a blizzard, we're at home for a week. What would you want to remind yourself at that point? And most of them were just the degree to which they could tune the expectations of students and the way that they laid out their classrooms to reduce down dead time. So if you've been on a bunch of Teams meetings for the last 3 months, you know that every now and then there's just moments where for, it seems like 15 seconds, no one says anything. And so trying to weed those moments out and to make instructions clear, and primarily the transaction cost between students saying, wait, I don't quite understand what you mean by this. And you can do that really rapidly in a classroom setting, face-to-face. In 30 seconds, you can clarify an assignment. But in an online meeting, it's more difficult. People interrupt each other when they jump in, or they don't quite hear the instructions, or they would rather just guess than unmute themselves. So that's where most of it was. Some teachers had all sorts of elegant, second screen setups, or pre-printing their lesson plan, or so that they could, or using their cell phone as a companion device as like a little document camera, little tricks of that nature. And I think the biggest takeaway was just that everybody went in expecting that they were already a great teacher. They're going to be a great remote teacher on day one, and everybody was disappointed in themselves, and they worked really hard to get themselves up to speed quickly, and they should be kinder to themselves.
So Cheryl, I'm curious on your side, were there, same question maybe for the staff and leadership team, because it's similar dynamic going on there, I'm guessing, and are there any reflections on your end or observations?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest pieces was really encouraging people, like Briggs said, to not be too hard on themselves, because to take a moment to step back and realize we're not experts in this. We've maybe been more expert in or more proficient in what it is to conduct our business on campus, or to conduct our education on campus, but really we're all learners in this. And so I think giving folks the space to create some grace for themselves, and we actually, in a staff meeting we had with just some of our administrative staff, we had our parent educator, our scholar in residence, Dr. Kelly Moore, helping us through a framework of just expressing what are some things that we have gratitude for, what are some pain points that we're having. Those things are going to coexist with one another. For those of us who are in this quarantine environment, this remote environment with kids of our own at home, or different constraints that make it hard to balance full-time work in the way that we've been used to doing in person. I think that just having that grace with ourselves and being able to share with one another and just hear some of those concerns or those constraints or those challenges echoed in one another. Again, much like our group of the senior leadership team, I think it just created that sense of support. So it's like, okay, this is just what it is, and we can get through it because we know that we're not alone in getting through it. And then when you have that sense of security and that truth, you can feel more inspired to come up with new things. You can feel more inspired to say, okay, I think I've got the energy to take on a new challenge that's come up as a result of being remote.
Well, let's. Oh, sorry, was that it?
I was just going to mention that we've done a few surveys of our communities, and one of the real things that we are trying to keep in mind is that for some people this is fabulous. There are some of our students that, wow, I get to sleep in an extra half hour in the morning, and between classes I can go do stuff around the house. And for others, it's just the worst thing that could have happened to them. And that you aren't really creating these events and these experiences for one audience. It's like 6 different audiences, and the range of opinions on what is good and what is the right thing to do is much wider than it is in a normal school, because everyone has a conception of what normal school looks like, and very few people have a conception of what normal remote school looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you remind me there, as we decided to stay synchronous, holding on to our daily schedule. We truncated our periods by about 30 minutes, but holding on to our daily schedule and 8:30 to 3 was a structure, I think, that helped community-wide. Right, there was a full day of school, not a school day shutting down at noon, right, and then students being on their own to try to figure out, right, to essentially executive function on their own. We're talking about 10, 11-year-olds through 18-year-olds. So holding on to that period schedule, I think, was really important for us to have some normalcy.
Yeah, no, those are great insights. So Cheryl, I think one of the things, like in my role, the thing that I hear the most right now, and I'm gonna share my screen here in a moment, is, okay, what's gonna happen next year? What's gonna happen in fall? In your case, like, how will we do school admissions if we can't have people on campus all the time? Like that has never existed, that concept in the past. So I think we're gonna share here, and you're gonna maybe walk through what is EPS thinking in this case on how do we handle this unknown situation. So give me just a moment.
Yeah. Well, I think if you saw Briggs's background of the Minecraft version of campus and my photograph of campus, both of these are facsimiles of the real campus, and neither one of them is the real campus. So it is something that we're really thinking about, because so much of how we've onboarded families traditionally has centered around inviting them to campus experiences that maybe are initially a little bit more of come and see. That's the open house type of format, or a campus tour for parents and guardians. And then maybe it's more invest a little bit more of yourselves. For us, that has always included a parent guardian interview and student visits, where they're going to have the opportunity to roam campus. They're going to be guided through some sort of class experiences. For upper schoolers, they've had interviewers one-on-one with faculty. So thinking about taking that all remote, one of the things that's been really, really important to us is just considering what is about information delivery and really what is about connection. So when we're thinking about this idea of why are we remote right now? We're remote because it's important to be doing school. We're remote because it's important to be in community with one another. So one of the first things that we did in March, as we were moving we're moving to EPS remote, and we were also finishing up our middle school admissions for the year, is we had to re-articulate our value proposition. So for schools and families, a lot of it has been around this idea of, we'll be in person again someday. But I think as we've gone through the spring and as we're heading into the summer now, it's actually the value of school is really about how do we keep community together? How do we keep continuity of something like a schedule? How do we really work to have an exchange that happens in the virtual space that feels like there's actual meaningful growth that occurs as a result? Being able to tell that story more effectively is something that our admissions team, and I think our whole school community has worked to do. And so I think that letting go of this romantic notion of, we're just giving people in the admissions process a sense of what it'll look like when we're in person again. No, that's not going to work for families anymore, because they have been confronted with the challenges of homeschooling for the first time, many of them. They've been confronted with the challenges of having kids want to do very developmentally appropriate things like be with their friends, and they haven't been able to do that in the same way that they have before. So I think that shift in how we talk about what the value of school is and what the value of educational communities is central to the work that we're doing right now. And then to that end, we have to design experiences that will help people to both learn and connect. So in March, we utilized the Teams Live event platform to be able to have collectives, much like this one. Actually, the screenshot that I have here is of an event where we were featuring for our middle school applicant families specifically, what has it been like since we've gone remote? Because it had only been just about 2.5 weeks at the point that we produced that event. And we wanted to give them insights into what have we been learning already. So we had our director of academic design and integration. We had our technology and our instruction encompassed with both Jonathan and Andrea Jostel, who was part of the event. And we wanted to be able to just, again, talk about here's what we're doing right now. But we also wanted to produce that event so that families would have a chance to ask questions. So having the Q&A chat feature in the Teams Live event was great for that. And then what we did was take that synchronous experience that families could tune in for as part of the week in which they're making a decision after having received an enrollment offer, and be able to access that online. So families that weren't able to join us at that time for any number of reasons, or just wanted to skim that content, they had the ability to access that in an asynchronous way. So as we're thinking about the fall, we're not going to be able to have a 500-person open house in this big, beautiful Tally building that I have behind me here. But what we will be able to do is host a number of different Teams Live and Teams meeting events that will help us to approximate those information exchanges as well as those community building moments. So we're planning on having just some easy access points for students. So it would function as a way of getting students used to the Teams meeting platform. If it's something that they haven't before. And it would also give them then a sense of when they're coming back for a mock class that we're going to do online, when they're coming back for a student interview that we're going to be hosting online. Okay, I'm familiar, I'm comfortable with this platform because I played a game in it back in the fall, or I played a game in it in the winter. And that was something that was, just kind of fun and novel to me, but I was learning the tools along the way. So that's one of the ways that we're planning to use the Teams meeting format to integrate into the admissions process. And we'll have lots of different touch points as we go through the year, but especially for our information exchange events, things where we might be having a conversation much like this about something like, what do fine and performing arts look like at EPS now? What do athletics look like at EPS now? Those are all things that we can have in both that synchronous or that asynchronous way. So a lot of what we're thinking about with the upcoming year is that we can't just do business as usual. The idea of an admissions process where we've been learning about students through teacher evaluations and through transcripts that have grades on them, and through test scores that are, taken on a Saturday sometime in the fall or the winter in a large group setting, that is all going to have to change. So even more so than ever, the vital importance of finding ways in the virtual space to connect with one another and feel like we're actually catching those meaningful stories from students, and we're actually getting a candid sense of who they are. And that's really going to be a huge emphasis for us moving into the fall, because the idea that we're going to have the same sorts of admissions factors and process that we've had in the past and just be hoping to be in person is not something that we can depend on anymore.
No, this is really, for me, this is fascinating as well, because there are so many schools out there who I think are trying to figure out this exact type of topic. And it's not, you can think about most universities and colleges across the country are having to grapple with all these same topics. And honestly, this is one of the first ones I've ever seen the official proposals on, or what you're going to do. So for me, it's interesting because I think in the next 3 months, we're going to see a round of different ways that schools all around the world that have to figure out these types of topics. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's a really interesting topic. Yeah. Another kind of related, not to the future, but maybe current and future, and I know EPS is going through this. Can people share, can one of you or all of you talk about some of the virtual graduation events that you're planning in your school?
I might, if you don't mind. I can actually walk you through our 8th grade one.
Yeah.
I think I can share this. Hold on a sec. Let me know if you're seeing that.
I can see it now.
There we are.
You can see it now? All right, excellent. So this is, and Mike, you've been on campus before. This is the parking lot.
I recognize.
And so we had some students build this Minecraft world for graduation. And we are actually we're going to do a very short session. Actually, I'll talk about our graduation normally for 8th grade is we have students walk in, line up in the theater, and they will then receive a speech from one of the faculty members about their time and what they hope for, and then they get a book, and they get their diploma. And what we did this year is we're thinking about, the various platforms that we have at our disposal, what the experience is going to be like. So we have our 8th graders we bought them all Minecraft accounts, which ends up being a bit of an 8th grade present. And then they are going to come walk through, get out, go graduate. And then all of the speeches that used to be given by faculty live in the event are being done on Flipgrid right now. And then when the graduation is over, we will unmoderate the Flipgrid. So all those speeches become available for them to go listen to, and they can listen to their friends, they can listen to all of them, they can download theirs. And then in the physical world, they're going to receive a box that has their 8th grade graduation certificate. It's going to have the book that the faculty member decided to give them, and it's going to have their speech typed out in a nice binder. So they're going to have a physical artifact. They're going to have an online event. And then the parents are going to watch the Minecraft event in the same way that all of you are watching this Minecraft event right now, where we're going to share it to a Teams live event, and have someone being the cameraman, essentially. So they'll be back.
Wow.
Now,
if that isn't growth mindset in action, Jonathan, I don't know what is. There's a lot of new things being figured out that you're just showing us right now. It's incredible.
We felt licensed to make 8th grade more whimsical than the high school one, so that's why we did this whole thing. In fact, they put a little basketball court. This is where we were just near Cheryl's office, and this is the building that I normally live in.
Oh yeah. Can I go downstairs in there and check out the laser?
No, actually, because in the background they decided to build an obstacle course, so the kids have been going through this Minecraft obstacle course. It's been pretty hilarious. We've got some of our kids are very Minecraft savvy, and the whole thing is locked down so they can't break it. And they've been figuring out clever ways to, actually go acquire items and stuff like that. It's been a trip. For 12th grade, we are doing much more of we're trying to do a bit of make it feel a little bit more formal. So they're going to get boxes delivered by all of us. We're all going to be delivering boxes with our gloves on. And then they have a more produced video style graduation that they're going to watch in the afternoon.
Very cool.
If anyone wants to add anything to those details.
Jonathan, as you're talking, what I'm thinking about is any venue you're going to have a continuation or a graduation in is going to be finite, right, in terms of how many seats and how much space there is. The thing that I'm looking forward to this year is that our entire community has so much more access to these two events, right? It's I'm thinking about the 5th grader who typically might not attend something, who is going to be more drawn to being in this Minecraft world, to watching, and then imagining themselves 3 years from now being in a similar place.
Or even grandparents in other countries. I mean, it's, I don't think we're going to hit the 20,000 limit on Teams Live, but
one captioning can be more inclusive. Captioning, translating different languages for people who might have challenges understanding. So yeah, there's a lot of more inclusive options. It opens it up. Yeah.
And that sort of comes back to the initial point. So sure, there's tons of constraints on doing it this way, but there's also opportunities, and it's harder to see those because you aren't used to seeing those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Well, just wrapping up on a maybe more tactical note, but at the same time, I know that Jonathan will never be shy, but Matt and Cheryl as well.
I don't think that any of the three of us.
Schools that led the charge sort of on distance learning, I think probably in the world. What are the things? What can Microsoft Teams or our platform? What do you think are key things that we still need? What do you still need to make it even better? I mean, without getting into the micro,
It's like, you got another 40 minutes.
But what are observations where it's like, okay, this worked, but here's some things that we think we'll need more of in the future. And I won't make any promises right now, but I just
we won't hold you to them, but we'll be hopeful. But I would say that one of them for certain is that we've seen a cultural shift in the virtual space as we've gone from the 4x4 to the 2x2, the 4 up to the 9 on a screen. That has changed the way that our educators are interacting with students when they have more students that are visible to them on the screen. And so as we're thinking about our virtual admissions events, part of it is hosting a mock class format for students that we're planning to do. And so in that mock class, for a classroom management perspective, as well as from an admissions observation perspective, to have more students who are visible to us simultaneously, that just allows us to have more data and be able to have more insights into how the experience is going for the student, as well as how they're interacting with one another. So having more visibility on the screen, and I've heard tell that is coming, but that's something that we're really excited for, because actually we will have to build out our admissions events with 7 to 8 max students in order to have, a faculty member and an admissions team member in the room in the team's meeting with the student. So that's one thing that, certainly we're very optimistic for and excited about.
Well, I like to make people happy, so I'll just say that you should count on that getting much broader in the near future without putting out any dates. Maybe after the webinar I can share some inside details, but I don't share any other than to hear you loud and clear.
Great.
Yeah. I would say when I think about being a teacher or think about being a student, it's about authorship. As much as Microsoft Teams can move to being even more of a dashboard than it is, not just being able to see the whole class, but being able to manipulate what is on the screen, where it is on the screen, identifying and being able to pin multiple speakers, just to be able to continue to construct and author the experience. I think that educators, when they have that opportunity, they have the opportunity, they keep classes engaging, right? Because they're leaning in, the students are going to feel that. So as much as we can manipulate what's on screen, the better the classroom experience is going to be for students.
That is another good one, Matt. And without promising anything publicly, I think we hear you loud and clear, and stay tuned in the near future.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that one. And I've actually talked to a couple of people on your team with Dr. Kellerman, who has been doing a lot of team stuff as well.
I mean, it takes like 15 minutes.
Oh, good. The degree to control not only what you see as a teacher, but also what your students see on their screens is really key. If you think about just an average teacher goes into their classroom and they rearrange the furniture, or they rearrange the students in the classroom for different reasons, for different activities and different needs. We're now constrained to 12 inches of screen space. We want to have control over as much of it as we possibly can, and we want to be able to not have it. It's not that there's a perfect screen. There's a perfect screen for this type of activity, and we want to be able to cycle through those different presets, if you will, really, really easily.
Yeah, that one, we are definitely working towards that.
Yeah,
we'll get better. You always hit a high bar, Jonathan, so I don't know.
I know.
Let's jump over the bar, but we're going to get close to the bar. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up and sort of housekeeping at the end, and I'm going to share my slides here again in a second. But thank you all for joining us, and maybe hang around after the break here in a couple minutes, and I'll share some up and coming good stuff with y'all. So thanks a lot for joining us today.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, just a recap of today's update. The virtual graduation information is right there. The accessibility resources page for remote learning, special education, inclusion, that is a great one to not only share with educators, but for parents. And then end of the year, students can save their class notebook. And that is a nice way to make sure you take all your stuff with you, just like kind of in the real world when you save your binders when you leave school. And the notes for this, the PowerPoint deck, will be posted by the time you're watching this video. And we have our entire remote learning playlist where this webinar will be posted on right here. This is on the Microsoft YouTube playlist. And then if you ever have an issue or a bug or anything in between, we have support folks who are really focused on just educators. So support staff for educators, you can file a ticket here and we can help you get unblocked. Other than that, a couple of webinars coming soon. Actually, next Monday, we've got kind of a legend in the education world. Michael Fullen and Joanne Quinn are both going to be on a webinar. I'm excited for this one because they are kind of system thinkers and visionary and thinking about what do they see in the future with remote learning and hybrid education. And then we've got another what's new now or what to use now and what's coming soon for Teams meetings. A lot of good stuff coming for the future. Dominic Williamson from the Teams group is going to be here talking about all the latest and greatest, and the full schedule's below. Thank you very much for Maryline, who is our producer behind the scenes, and we hope to see you soon.